So I just want to welcome everyone. I know it says my name there, Adam Pearl. I'm President and CEO of ArtPride New Jersey. With me, Anne-Marie Miller, our Director of Advocacy and Public Policy. We appreciate you coming today. I want to start off by saying that there is closed captioning available for today's webinar. That's in the chat feature there. We'll post that. Oh, there it is. So if you need that, I should also mention up top that we are recording today's webinar, and that recording will be available more than likely later today on ArtPride's website. So if you need to go back and revisit some of the information, it will be there for your use. Also want to mention at the top, excuse me, that if you do have questions and answers, and hopefully you do along the way, please post them in the questions and answers at the bottom. You can use that feature, that button, to add questions and answers, and we'll do our best to organize them and answer them. And then also, as I mentioned with the closed captioning link that we just posted, keep your eye on the chat feature in case we have other URLs or other information we want to share. But if you do have questions, that Q&A space is the best place to put them. And I think that's it for my announcements at the top. I'll pass it over to you, Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Adam. So welcome, everybody. This is our 21st Arts Advocacy Update webinar. So we're going to move right into what's new. So round 2 of PPP is available until March 31st. And this week, Governor Murphy announced that PPP loans and expenses paid with them are tax exempt. Just to give you some perspective, New Jersey has now had 30,827 loans approved for almost $3 billion, or an overall average of $94,557. Here at ArtPride, I think this week we received our second PPP loan, so that's a really good thing. In the meantime, the Small Business Emergency Loan Program available through the EDA has been deferred, and basically allowing time for the PPP loans to be accessed before they become available. For more information on both PPP and the other EDA loans, the link is there for business.nj.gov/COVID. These are just some tax tips about what should and should not be included when dealing with taxable income and doing tax returns. PPP funds should not be included in taxable income, but expenses can be deducted on tax return. IRS stimulus checks should not be included in taxable income. EIDL advances not included in taxable income. These are going down to CARES relief funds regranted to individuals and businesses should be included in taxable income according to the IRS, along with state and federal pandemic unemployment assistance. And then employee retention credits cannot be taken on that portion of employee wages that were covered with a PPP forgivable loan. So this will stay in the webinar. You can reference it later if you want to. In the meantime, shuttered venue operator grants that are to be available through the SBA are not yet available. The SBA, this is a brand new program for them, and my understanding is they have been short-sighted on staff in getting this actually out there. In the meantime, however, there are FAQs updated regularly. I think the last update was last Friday, and they're very helpful. The information in there is very useful. And there is the link there for where that FAQ is located. And it gives you some guidance. It doesn't tell you what to do, but it does give you some guidance. In the meantime, we're asking folks to urge support for the arts and continued COVID relief legislation. So at the Arts Action Fund, and we'll have this link on the ArtPride Action, Arts Action page as well, to urge support in the current consideration of COVID relief through this reconciliation process that's going on now. You should know that within that, there is $135 million for support for the NEA and the NEH. And also, which I think was a little unexpected for me, but very glad to hear that there's $1.25 billion on top of the $15 billion that was previously allocated for the shuttered venue operators grants. So this is going to take a while for this to plow through. It's now in the House. It has to go through the Senate, and it's going to change. But in the meantime, please use the link to urge our New Jersey delegation to be supportive. And you can add additional information in your emails that are specific to what your questions and needs are. In New Jersey, so just so you know what's going on here, if you haven't heard, the New Jersey has extended the open enrollment to May 15th for health insurance marketplace, which I think is really, helpful and should be something that is brought to the attention of our creative workers, and knowing that that is extended. Going to the ArtPrideNJ.org Act now, the action alert is please continue to ask Governor Murphy to increase state support for arts, history, and tourism in the FY22 budget. By the time we have our next webinar, we'll know exactly what the governor has proposed, but it's really, really important to let him know that we really need that extra funding. And we're asking him to honor as closely as possible the legislation he signed last January that would allocate $31.9 million for cultural projects through the State Arts Council. And, while we're all trying to recover, that funding is super valuable, invaluable. So please take a moment if you haven't done that now and share this action alert with colleagues, board members, friends, family, etc. Coming up soon is the National Arts Action Summit, sponsored by Americans for the Arts. To register, the link is up at the top, and that registration just opened this week. And you should know also that ArtPride is offering a limited number of scholarships available to leaders, BIPOC leaders of arts organizations. So, there will be a link if the link is not already there. And excuse me, I can't remember when we posted it, to enter a brief form if you are interested in one of those scholarships. It's 5 days worth of webinars that deal with everything from arts funding for the cultural organizations to tax policy to education policy, and how to put your story best in front of legislators. It will be followed by a week. This is April 5th through the 9th, and it will be followed by a week afterwards of meetings that we will schedule through ArtPride to meet with our congressional delegation members via virtual platform. So Vincent Hall in our office and I are working on this together. And if you are interested or you have questions about the National Arts Action Summit, please email us, call us, let us know. We'd be happy to answer any of those questions. These are just some of the pictures of us in the past when there were no gates in front of the Capitol, and you were able to roam freely as an advocate to speak with your legislators. Good days of the past. Also, just letting you know, we have this information available as well that includes the for-profit industry along with the nonprofit industry and how COVID has affected New Jersey. So you need to know that this information is available for you. And if it's not there at this moment, it will be on the Keep Jersey Arts Alive website so that you have this information. Let's see, okay, we are at our feature of the webinar, and I was gonna try to figure out how to make this look springy, because I kept thinking that, maybe the color blue, but like flowers or something, we would be spring awakening and moving ahead into the spring months of coming up spring and summer, how do we get ready for working in public spaces? So I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Nancy Davis, who's on the Stockton University Board of Trustees. Nancy is former mayor and currently Borough Council member for the Borough of Beach Haven, and Patrick Council, who is the Director of Recreation, Cultural Affairs and Senior Services for the City of Newark. And I think what I'm going to do is stop share for a moment, pause share, and ask them to come up with their videos and audios. And what I think I'd like you to do is I'm going to, first of all, welcome them and thank you for being here today on a Friday morning when it's snowy outside, but I'm trying to think about the spring and how we can access public spaces knowing that the spring months are coming. So if you could just take a minute to talk about your experiences working with arts organizations, that would be great. So let's start with Nancy.
Okay. I unmuted myself and I unvideoed I let my video up. Anyway, I have a great respect for the arts. It's created so much pleasure in my life. I think it's so vital for young people to be exposed to the arts in so many respects. I think it's character building. I think it's a way of being able to cope with life, and it brings a lot of thoughts and ideas to the forefront of people's minds. So to me, the art community is extremely important. During COVID, I actually, even before COVID, I have been very supportive of the Surflight, which we're so fortunate to have a theater in our town. And Steve has done an amazing job. It adds to the character of the town. There's a lot of activities besides just going to a play. There's children's activities. There's all sorts of things that really bring the community together. So the three main things that I've really been involved in my town in the arts are the Surflight Theater. The Lighthouse Film Festival is another one. And also I established back after Sandy, our municipal building was totally destroyed. And we were very fortunate to get a $5 million grant to rebuild it. And we have a beautiful municipal building today. And it's so much nicer than the other, and it allows us to do a lot. And so there's a lot of space in the hallways on both the first and second floor. And I thought, gee, this would be a great place to display art. So I talked to a lot of people, local artists. I talked to the Noyce Museum at Stockton. And we now, with COVID, things aren't functioning as well because the building's pretty much shut down to the public for the time being. But we have an exhibit on the second floor of the building of paintings from the Noyce Museum, which is, they change about every 4 months. And then on the bottom floor, we established a very nice system that makes it easy to hang pictures and display them. And we've been working with Pine Shores Art group, and they bring in a lot of really local artists to display their art, and we have like openings and events in the building that basically allow people to come in and look at the art and see how beautiful our building is. So that has been very rewarding for me. Unfortunately, as I say, now during COVID, the building's closed, so nothing much is happening, but I anticipate as people get vaccinated, we'll get this back and running again. So it's very exciting to see these things happen. Last year, I don't know how much detail, tell me if I'm talking too much, but last year, I mean, we knew that theaters were closing, and I mean, I always subscribe to the Surflight. I've worked closely with Steve, and he came to me and asked if there was any way he could utilize the park in front of the theater to put up a large tent that would allow him to have performances over the summer. And it was, we put a lot of time and effort in. It had to go to the full council. We had to get his ideas of how big it was going to be. There just were so many different aspects of it that had to be looked into. But we, right where the theater is, we also have a historical museum. And so that area, we sort of think of it as sort of an arts area. We actually have 2 history museums in town, which we as a town donate a certain amount of money to all these artistic ventures in the town to help them, because we know how hard it is. But anyway, Steve was able to get this tent set up, and he was very careful. I attended every performance in the tent. When you got to go in, you had assigned seats. The seats were all separated from each other, so you felt very safe. We wore masks in the tents. It was really very, very rewarding. And I know he didn't make the money he would in the theater because the seating was limited, but he lost less money during this venture than he would have if he hadn't had it. And it right now we're all thinking that this COVID situation is going to go into this coming summer. And so I anticipate, we've already talked about having this tent in the park again. And it was amazing. We had a really bad storm in July and it blew the tent down. I mean, it was unbelievable. And they had it up and running in one day. It was incredible. So it was like a beacon of hope, I think, in the town. If nothing else, it gave people the feeling that we can persevere with this, we can go on. Steve also was able to keep the show place running, which is a venue where people buy ice cream and they have a little show, and young aspiring actors and actresses sing, and they have a little show, and we did that outside. And it was very, very successful. I mean, people were really looking for things to do during COVID, things that would be safe. So that was really a wonderful thing. And there were a lot of glitches. There were a lot of things we had to get approval with from the whole council. We had to work with the health department to make sure that everything was safe. At one point, Steve had curtains on the side of the fence that the health department thought maybe would contain the virus too much. So we sort of opened that up. And so, and all in all, it was very, very successful. And as I say, it was a beacon of hope in the community. The Lighthouse Film Festival is another really wonderful venue we have down here, where usually the Lighthouse Film Festival occurred in June. And it was before the Surflight really got going. And basically, they normally have films in the Long Beach Island Art Foundation, as well as the museum in town. We have a museum in town, but they couldn't do it this year. So they asked if they could do a drive-in movie in Beach Haven. And it was a lot of work, but we managed to, there was one park that we thought would be perfect, but it's the park where if there's an emergency, the helicopter lands, if somebody's broken their neck or whatever. So we really couldn't take the risk of having cars parked where the helicopter would land. So we used the same park where the tent was, but the tent wasn't put in until after, I don't believe until after the Lighthouse Film Festival was finished, because that's usually early in June. And they're asking, and recently they just came up with a request to do it again. And they had 2 films. One of the problems is it stays late, so late in June. It's the longest days of the year, so you had to start kind of late. But it was a success. People loved it. I think they were sold out every night. They had a couple other venues where they did it. At the parking lot of the Art Foundation, and a venue over in Stafford Township, which is across the bridge on the mainland. But it was very successful. And I know they've already come to me and talked to me about it. So there were some glitches and problems, but we worked it out. So one of the problems was some of the council members were worried that there would be risque pictures and content that would be offensive to parents with children. Actually, the movies didn't start till dark and most children were in bed by then, but they worked really hard to show movies that didn't have that kind of content. So it all worked out fine, but it was a lot of discussion, a lot of work, but it was really wonderful to see that kind of activity in Beach Haven.
So I have a lot of questions, but let's move over from Beach Haven over to Newark and ask Patrick, whose job takes in recreation, cultural affairs, and senior services, like what experiences you've had in Newark.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Ann and Adam and ArtPride for allowing me to sit and share in this conversation, to Nancy and the wonderful work that you guys are doing. You know, the unfortunate thing about COVID is that we really find out how important certain entities are in terms of our existence and what it is that we do in our day-to-day work, and finding out how vital the art community is in our mental health, our wellness, and helping to sustain us even through these times. And I know it's been difficult times for many of our art activists, our art community, who have been, sharing a burden of this brunt, but also who have been the upstanding, tantamount of what it is that we need. We've been very active in Newark. We have a very progressive mayor, Mayor Baraka, who understands the importance of art activation, working with the art community, and also pouring back in, to our art activists and what is happening here in the city. We just don't pride ourselves on the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, but also Symphony Hall, which is a milestone and attribute in our community. But more importantly, to all of those artists, those visual artists, those performing artists who are out in our community every single day, trying to make a living, trying to make a way, and more importantly, how we need to bring them in and begin to activate them in our public spaces. We were very active, from last March even up to now in the work that we've done. It's been publicized, not just statewide, but nationally, with our Creative Arts Fund that we put out. We had a Creative Arts Fund, a Catalyst Fund, where we've had about $800,000 that we've broken up and put back into the arts community, that they can be able to provide programs, provide logistic housing for artists. We're working on housing for an artist program now in one of our areas in the city that will be activated for art display, as well as art therapy and movement. We also have been very active in mural activation throughout our entire city during this pandemic, because we realized that wellness, self-care is so important, that we have been activating a lot of mural display and designs throughout the city, have been retouching and glamoring them up. We've created small business loans for our art community, provided housing and art activation housing for our artists. And we continue to, try to, push the envelope, right? We've had socially distanced movies this summer, part of our summer fun activities. Also shared the old drive-in experience that once was loved by so many back in the day, but so many things to try to keep our art enthusiasts involved, engaged in what is happening, not just in their cities or municipalities, wherever they may be, but in the life and well-being of the artists, because we realize that is important. And we know that those artists are the lifelines to our community and helping to sustain us and helping to motivate us even through this pandemic. So we have done a lot, and we will continue to do a lot to continue to activate the art population in our city, the artists, and we are a welcoming site to all of our artists. I'm excited to have a manager of our division who is very in tune with our art community, with Newark Arts. Miss Fahmy Shakur is doing a wonderful job at bringing the arts community back together, lifting and encouraging and ensuring them that they have a place at the table in our city. And that is what's important, as we continue to go through this. So, I'm thankful that we have not left them out, and that they feel important about that as well.
Thank you. I mean, a seat at the table really is important. And I think, access in any way, shape, or form is built on relationships. So my first question really is basically, what is the very first best step for an arts organization who's interested in using public space in their either in their town or in their county, in their, somewhere locally? What's the first thing they should do if they're interested in using public space? So either of you can chime in on that one.
Well, I guess the first thing in my community, I mean, I'm a little teeny tourist town, which in the winter, there's hardly anybody here, but in the summer it's packed. I mean, the extent of what I do is nothing compared to Newark, but the first thing we ask somebody to do, usually somebody come, I was mayor, but we have a form of government where the mayor really doesn't have any more say in anything than anybody else, but you just do more work. But somebody would come to me and say something, and then we have a form that one fills out to do that, where they put together what they need, where they want to work. And we sat down and worked with everybody individually, because this was very complicated. And we knew that we wanted these businesses, the arts as well as other businesses, to survive during this time. So we work with the person with the idea. We have to get approval from the police force, because we do have a lot of people in the summer and we don't want to create a dangerous situation. We work with our public works department. We have a very, very capable head of our public works department that comes up with the logistics. You have to address things like bathrooms, and I mean, there's all kinds of, dumpsters and all kinds of things like that have to be addressed. And then it's a matter of really convincing the council that this is a good thing to do. And so far, so good. So far, we've been able to convince the council, and we've been able to have these events. And I'm hoping we can actually have more. People need things like this to do it. I mean, we have a lot of mental health issues going on right now because of COVID, and having a place they can go to be entertained is amazing. It's so wonderful. So, that's basically the procedure.
And Patrick, I guess, please, yes.
Yeah, we're very robust in the things that we do. We encourage folks that want to be involved and be active in utilizing our public space to reach out to our recreation department, 973-733-5373. That number again is 973-733-5373. You can call us and we'll give you direction about permit process, application, best practices, and what needs to happen to encourage your program, and what it is that you're looking to do, what it is that we encourage, what it is that we do not encourage. But, as it relates to the arts, we want people to be able to, be awakened to an art experience and be able to make sure that families and young people alike can be able to get out and enjoy these type of events. So, we ask folks to come in, participate. We'll guide you through the mechanisms of what needs to happen and in hopes of making sure that you are able to produce a good product.
And I think Adam has some questions.
Yeah, Emery, thank you. We got a few questions in from folks. Just as a reminder, if you have questions, please put them in the question and answer feature. So some of these are logistical. So Anne, someone was asking, Dr. Davis, Anne Matlock was asking if you recall at the tents at Surflight Theater in Beach Haven, if the tents were open on the sides.
Yeah, yes, they were open on the side. As I mentioned, initially they were closed, and we put in actually almost something like you would see as a tennis windscreen so that air can move through. And then what they did, because I mean, one of the problems was it didn't want everybody just standing outside watching it without paying. And we didn't want to attract too much crowds. But they then had a fence about, I don't know, 6 to 10 feet on the outside of the tent going around that, gave but I mean, it was fun. I could be taking a walk in the evening and I'd hear singing and from the tent, and it was just made you feel so good. It was wonderful. So you couldn't really totally block out the sound, but it was much better to be there. And it was amazing the way he did it. He had the seats set up for every person ahead of time. So when you went, they took you right to your seats, and they were very safe and distanced from everybody else. So it was amazing.
Thank you. And there's Anne-Marie, there's a couple questions here that I think are just sort of in general. One of them, it was sort of about a generic checklist on where to begin that Diane Roberts had. And Anita Thomas was asking if anyone's doing an assessment of public spaces that municipalities are willing to make available for all kinds of art from visual to dance, and what's the process for an artist to make requests. And I think one of the most important things here to remember is, you know, New Jersey is very focused on home rule. So if it's a municipal park, you need to start with that municipality. If it's a county park, you need to start with that county. So it's tough to say if there's a checklist, but maybe our folks here can talk about generically some of the things that, and Dr. Davis mentioned them, but you really do need to start with who's in charge of that space. Is it the recreation department, the town, and the municipalities have professional folks. You can pick up the phone and ask them, but each town, each municipality, especially now, is going to be different.
Yeah, you did a great job in answering that question, Adam. I mean, you were right on it. It starts with, you know, the municipality, and you want to reach out to, more importantly, the recreation departments in those municipalities that may have shared covered space with its cultural affairs departments, or there may be separate cultural affairs department that could be able to access to you the public space in those areas. I know for the City of Newark, you would reach out to my office, as I am the Director of Recreation, Culture Affairs, and Senior Services, and we are responsible for parks. We have about 84 parks in our city. We have 5 major parks in our downtown area: Military Park, Lincoln Park, Riverfront Park, Mulberry Commons, which is one of our newer parks, which is next to our Prudential Center that hosts the New Jersey Devils. And we have the newly named Tubman Square, that we're going to be introducing, that the mayor was very vigilant and turning around with all of the things that have been happening over the Black Lives Matter movement, and making sure that artists had space to be able to get out and enjoy themselves. And so, you know, we're very active in our community. Again, we have a very robust art community that's very involved. Many organizations, nonprofit organizations that are very involved in what is happening in the city of Newark as the movement of arts and culture returns back to the birthplace of Sarah Vaughan, and, you know, where it all has come from before. So it all starts with, you know, reaching out to your municipal government, and, as he said before, your county government if there are county parks.
Anne-Marie, there's a couple questions here on costs. So I'll read both of these questions and then maybe the folks. And so we had one from an anonymous attendee that says, do arts organizations typically have to pay for municipality support in terms of police foot patrol, crowd control to help enforce social distancing? Typically these things are easily controlled in partnership with a traditional performance venue, but you may not be able to be managed by arts organizations in public spaces without additional support. What is your advice, experience to help keep people safe? And similarly, someone was asking, Debbie Lambert-Rudman was asking, are these spaces, some of the spaces that you're talking about, available at no charge to artists, or what is the fee schedule? So maybe a little discussion about costs to arts organizations to put on events versus individual artists.
Yeah, those are good questions, because some of it is budgeting for a project or a festival, and then some of it is basically just finding out when you're budgeting what those costs are to the municipality for permits and other stuff. So anybody.
Well, I'll just mention a few things. A lot depended on the park people wanted to use, and that came up a lot because you do need police, and that does cost money. And there were a couple parks that we thought for the Lighthouse Film Festival would have been great, but they were very busy. A lot of businesses were around that area, and we thought we'd have to, it would cost too much for the event person, because they do have to pay for the police. And So that's why we chose the park we did, because it was very inexpensive to do that. Yes, a lot of those costs are passed on to the person doing the event, but they're really not that high. That they normally have to take a bond out, and a lot of, if somebody's having an event and there's alcohol, that costs a lot more. There's a lot of rigmarole that has to go along with that. But basically, they get their bond back if everything's fine. It isn't overwhelming. But yes, and we do have a checklist. Unfortunately, I would love to have a just a person that dealt with recreation and parks in town, but we just don't, we're just too small. We've talked about it, and maybe in the future that will happen, because I think there's so much more we can do with our parks. I mean, we have a lot of activities going on besides the arts, such as sporting events and that sort of thing. And it would be nice to have more children's programs. I know the Pine Shores art people had talked to me about having a program under one of the pavilions we have in the park for kids to learn how to draw. They would come there and give kids basic drawing lessons. I thought that was great. Unfortunately, COVID happened and everything got put on the back burner because of that. So, you know, there's a lot of really cool ideas out there.
And in Newark, it's basically the same, Patrick?
You know, in Newark, it's a, you know, a permit process. Permit is relatively low, could be $150 for Newark residents, $300 for non-Newark residents. If it's a special event permit or application, it could be anywhere from $300 to $500. Based on partnerships, many joint partnerships that you want to share with the city helps to lower the cost. It's always important to try to, you know, get municipalities or cities involved in helping to partner with you, so that, you know, those partnerships can lessen it based on what kind of activity or what it is that you're doing. Then those other things would be looked at in terms of programmatic, you know, ventures and activities. But it's just a permit process, and also it deals with making sure that the event is insured. You know, as Nancy talked about, you want to have a certificate of liability insurance just to cover yourself in the event of anything that happens. And I know sometimes people say, you know, nothing's going to happen. It's the arts. Everything is great. And all of that sounds fabulous until, you know, the driver happens to fall asleep, or it's a DUI, or it's an accident, or some guy decides to run across the street and, you know, do something that he shouldn't be doing. And so you always want to be prudent, but you always also want to be safe as well. So it's just a permit process, a small fee that's associated with it. And if it's something that's big and major, that's going to impact that entire community, and you want that draw, your best bet is to always try to partner with that municipality or that county government that you can get those binds together, be it police force, help with DPW services, and the like.
And Adam, you have anything else?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions here if you want to keep going from
yeah, go ahead.
So there's a couple questions here on safety, regarding safety and social distancing. So Susan Peterson, and I'm not sure if we have direct answers to these questions, but maybe a conversation about what folks are thinking around safety. Susan Peterson asked, as I understand it, current outdoor gathering guidelines allow only 25 people to congregate. This is far fewer than last summer. Do we have an indication on when that gathering will increase? So I don't know that we have an answer for Susan. I'm not sure if that regulation is the right one, but there's another question here about how are you, from an anonymous attendee, how are you handling social distancing procedures in public places? And I think this is a good way to approach the question. And how are you supporting artists who are running or arts organizations who are running the events? This person's saying, we've been told that only small group limits, but in a public space that's not manageable, especially in a park or plaza. So maybe Patrick and Dr. Davis can talk a little bit about how safety precautions are held in place, you know, given large open spaces like a park or a plaza.
Well, I mean, this is very difficult to enforce. And yes, we do require social distancing, and we don't require people to wear masks if they're out walking or running. Some people do, they feel more comfortable. Most people, if they're walking by, we had a lot of sidewalk people eating on sidewalks and stuff, and most people would put a mask on if they walked along that sidewalk because there were more people. We do I mean, we do tell people that they need to social distance and wear a mask, but to be perfectly truthful, it really is almost impossible to enforce. It's very difficult. Even with businesses, it became a nightmare. And lots of times we'd have to get the health department to come in and try to convince people that they've got to be careful. Even if people, like say a bar and restaurant had an outdoor seating area, they still need to social distance outside, and people were crowding to the bar. Now there's no bar stools at the bar. But I do think that Murphy is slowly decreasing the restrictions on indoor dining and outdoor events. We really didn't have any problems. We had a very low rate of COVID in town during the summer. It's actually gotten much higher since the summer. And there's less people here now.
Which is very contrast to Newark, where the transmission rate was much higher because of the urban setting, and so it's a totally different experience there.
Yeah, and we've been very active in COVID protocols, recommendations, and procedures throughout the entire city, even in hosting events. And so, there's a difference just between an organized activity and an organized gathering in a park with people walking. Any artists or any groups that wanted to have organized activities, they had to submit to us a COVID plan that they would have. And in that plan, it had to talk about that they were going to distribute masks, they were going to have hand sanitizer at the location, they were going to make announcements and pass out information as it relates to COVID and remain socially distanced and make sure that all of those things were assured, and that there would be city personnel that would come around to that event or activity to make sure that those things were happening. And if they were not happening, we would stop the event immediately. As you said, COVID has hit Black and brown communities very hard. And here in the city, sometimes we were as high as last year, we're high as 68 something percent in positivity rate when this first started. And we continue to fight and beat it down. We're probably now about 11% positivity rate, but there's some areas in our city, as you know, the city of Newark breaks down in 5 different geographical wards. Some of our cities still had high positivity rates. The East Ward, for one, was about 30%, which has over 184 something eateries, outdoor, indoor sites. And our North Ward area was about 20 something percent. And so, the mayor was very vigilant, very progressive in the way that he's dealt with the whole pandemic throughout this whole process to help keep individuals and residents informed about what was happening, what was going on, and just to let them know that we were still, out actively being involved. We had summer fun activities, Play Street activities that were socially distanced, that had social distance games, hand sanitizer. We gave out masks, distributed masks, and used those as opportunities to engage people and talk to them about what was happening with this pandemic. And we continue to do that, pass out information and give information along. So we were very vigilant about how we handled that. And even as we continue to go through this with this vaccination process, we encourage everyone to continue to do that wherever you are. Have individuals put COVID protocols in place and use it as a way to pass out information and give out information so that people understand that this pandemic is real.
So seems like a good place to stop. And I want to thank you both, because I think if all of our municipal leaders are as approachable as you, we should have lots of arts events as the restrictions get lifted, outdoors and public spaces. So thank you so much for your time this morning. And if there are other outstanding questions, we'll check in the question box and see if we can refer them over to you by email. So thank you so much. One last thing was, some places arts commissions and parks and recreation are separate, and the idea of communicating, across commissions is a really good idea, because you might be able to take advantage of some of the things that are happening through the parks commissions that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. And there's nothing that you never underestimate the value of a successful event to the municipality and to the arts. So thanks again. I'm going to see if I can go through. I don't know if my screen is showing up. Yeah, well, here we go.
I wanted just to jump in and thank you to Patrick and Dr. Davis. And there were a few questions that we didn't get to. And I want to encourage, if you do have questions about the best way to go about this, or if there are other folks in New Jersey that are doing similar things, thinking about similar things to what you might be putting together for this spring and summer, reach out to us. That's what ArtPride is here for. So some of the questions might be, hey, has anybody tried this? Or who should I talk to about that? That's what we're here for. And we'll certainly connect you. And in a lot of places, we know folks at the municipal level, mayors and council people and arts commission folks. So, you know, don't forget to utilize ArtPride as a resource too, to help you get things done. I know for one, I'm looking forward to safe cultural experiences outside when the weather gets warmer.
No kidding. Thanks, Adam. And happy Lunar New Year coming up. So I just want to make sure that we extend that this weekend besides Valentine's Day. I didn't do a Valentine's Day slide. I don't know what that says about me, but please don't forget that Keep Jersey Arts Alive is there as your resource for information on the economic impact of the arts, not only statewide, but in your individual counties with resources. Please don't forget jerseyarts.com live, or events that are happening live, or events that are happening at home. And I wanted to make sure that you knew that the next webinar is February 26th at 3 p.m. It's a JAM webinar that will appropriately be focused on reopening and our summer outdoor stages campaign. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a really great weekend, and complete the poll that's showing up on your screen, and have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
so
everybody.
much.